Get ready to dive deep into one of the most gripping legal battles of our time. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and today we're unraveling the high-stakes drama surrounding one of the music industry's most enigmatic figures, Sean Diddy Combs. In a case that has captivated millions, the courtroom has become a battleground for fame, fortune, and the dark secrets that lurk beneath the glittering surface of celebrity life. As the gavel comes down, we'll explore the allegations, the testimonies, and the shocking twists that could change the course of Diddy's legacy forever. Was this case merely a clash of lifestyles or something much more sinister? With each episode, I will bring you exclusive insights, analysis, and witness testimony accounts that will leave you on the edge of your seat. So buckle up as we embark on this thrilling ride through the trial of the century, where the stakes are high, the drama is real, and the truth is anything but certain. This is the trial of Sean Combs. Let's get started. And welcome back. Just a quick catch up on what happened yesterday, May 27th in the Diddy trial. Capricorn Clark, an assistant to Diddy for years, described her experience working for him. She told jurors he threatened to kill her, subjected her to days of lie detector tests, shoved her at his Miami home in 2006, asked her to buy drugs, and kicked his on and off again girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, full force in 2011. Clark also recalled Diddy's rage at Kid Cudi after learning he was dating Cassie. Clark said Diddy banged on her door one morning in December of 2011, gun in hand, forced her to join him for a confrontation, saying, "Get dressed," and Clark said Diddy told her, quote, "We're gonna go kill Muscuddy," which is Kid Cudi's real last name. Clark testified that she took Cassie to Best Buy to purchase a burner cell phone she could use to communicate with Kid Cudi. Capricorn Clark explained to jurors that she was concerned Cassie was sending text messages on a phone paid for by Diddy. Clark said she was worried about that relationship between Cassie and Kid Cudi, and that Cassie was going to get us all killed. That was yesterday, May 27th of 2025, and we're back in session today, May 28th of 2025, and the prosecution calls Los Angeles Police Department officer Christopher Ignacio to the stand. Now, this officer has been with the LAPD for about 16 years, and he responded to Kid Cudi's home the morning Sean Diddy Combs allegedly broke in back in December of 2011. Now, at the time, he was on patrol in the Hollywood division, which included Kid Cudi's house. He and his partner, they responded to a radio call for a possible burglary at the home. This was at 8:20 a.m. And this officer testified that he noticed a black Escalade parked outside of Kid Cudi's home when he arrived. The SUV took off up the hill just as his marked police vehicle with lights and sirens on pulled up behind it. He said he took note of the license plate, but he couldn't see any passengers through the tinted glass. The officer also testified that he didn't pursue the Escalade because at that point, there wasn't any crime to investigate. But he did run that license plate, and he said when he ran the plate, the vehicle's registration tied back to Bad Boy Productions, Inc. The officer said at that point he entered the home because the door was unlocked. No one was home, but the officer noted several high-value watches and purses. Some were wrapped, Remember, this was around Christmas time and some were unwrapped. And one thing that I didn't tell you Cudi had said during his testimony that I'm going to tell you now is apparently Diddy, allegedly, went into this home and unwrapped half the Christmas presents. I guess just to piss the guy off before he threw a Molotov cocktail, allegedly, through the roof of Kid Cudi's Porsche. So the officer said Kid Cudi eventually came back to the house. Remember, he was on his way back when he called police. And at that point, he filed a trespassing report. And that was pretty much all the prosecution asked this guy. And it was the defense turn, Brian Steele, the defense attorney, taking over cross-examination of this LAPD police officer. And he starts picking apart details about this break-in at Kid Cudi's house. Steele first asked the officer if he noticed Cudi's black Porsche when he pulled up to that home, because all the police officer mentioned about him noticing when he pulled up was that black Escalade, which was registered to Sean Combs' company. At that point, the officer responded with, "I didn't see a Porsche." He also confirmed under the defense examination that he didn't see any property disturbed when he arrived at Kid Cudi's house. In the words of defense attorney Brian Steele, quote, "There was no furniture upended and no bullet holes in the walls or notes of threats." And he confirmed that. When Steele asked the officer how Cudi's demeanor was, he said Cudi was cooperative but flustered after the alleged break-in. And that was pretty much all the questions he had, so the officer is released from the stand and the prosecution calls Arson Investigator Lance Jimenez to the stand. And Jimenez starts testifying about the firebombing, that Molotov cocktail that was thrown through that Porsche. And he stated that the fire could have been much worse had the perpetrators used more basic materials. He went on to say the wick, if you will, of this firebomb was made by a fancy handkerchief. Well, that kind of narrows it down. You don't see too many common criminals running around using silk handkerchiefs to make firebombs, right? He went on to say, quote, "The gasoline didn't spread fire throughout the car because the cloth fell out of the bottle that didn't shatter, and it caused only a smoldering fire." He said had the firebomb exploded with the car parked just a few feet away from the house, the fire would have likely spread to the nearby foliage and eventually the home. So this could have been a lot more serious. Not that it wasn't serious already. He also said the Porsche was parked close to the garage and he observed a cut in the canvas roof of the vehicle and burn patterns throughout the seats. He said the center console, the interior roofing, and some of the carpet all had burns. Quote, "There was a bottle on the front seat and there was like a cloth, a handkerchief on the center console that was burned. He also noticed a disposable lighter outside of the car, a couple of feet from the driver's side." And it was at this point the jury is shown photos of the damage to that Porsche, including one that shows the Molotov cocktail sitting on that driver's seat. He went on to testify that he believed someone targeted Kid Cudi's Porsche. He noted that it was not easily visible from the street and parked in an affluent neighborhood with very low crime activity. And another car parked in that driveway at the time was not harmed at all. He said the bottle, the cloth, and the lighter were all tested for DNA, but only the bottle returned any results. And he confirmed that a partial DNA profile consistent with a female contributor came from that bottle, but said he didn't know exactly what that meant and he doesn't have any expertise in DNA testing or analysis. And it's at this point they take a 10-minute break. Now, during this break, out of the clear blue, defense attorney Alexandra Shapiro, she stands up and she says the defense moves for a mistrial based on misconduct by the prosecution. She then states that some prospective jurors said during jury selection that they believed Sean Combs could buy his way out of things. And I'm going to quote her here. She said, "This type of conspiracy theory is out there, and the type of implication we believe these questions were designed to create plays right into that theory." Shapiro went on to say a mistrial is the only proper remedy to cure the outrageous prejudice created by the prosecution's conduct. And the judge basically said, fuck you to that the jury was not prejudiced. Y'all, this all came down to some fingerprint cards. So the fire investigator, he testified Kid Cudi had his home swept for fingerprints after that trespassing incident, and he testified that 2 prints were recovered from the glass front door. Jimenez said he collected a card with those prints to compare them to anything retrieved from the arson incident, and he also testified the print card was kept in evidence from the arson case and was eventually destroyed by an LAPD officer in August of 2012. He said typically he had to sign off on the destruction of any evidence he submitted as a lead investigator, and he wasn't questioned before this stuff was destroyed. So the defense, they objected to this. The reason for their objection, obviously they're trying to get a mistrial, but these fingerprint cards don't exist anymore. So the objection itself was sustained. The judge ruled you can't bring that up because it doesn't exist anymore. Now, was some shady shit going on? Absolutely. Somebody had that LAPD officer destroy those fingerprint cards, but there's no evidence of that. So you can't say there was fingerprint cards when you don't have them anymore. I hope that makes it somewhat clear. However, this had already been said in front of the jury, so the defense point is you can't undo that. But again, the judge said, I told them, and he actually instructed him to totally ignore that. I'm going to quote him here. He said, the questions regarding the destruction of fingerprint cards and the answers given are irrelevant to this case and this defendant and are not to be considered by you. That was what the judge told the jury. He overruled that declaration of a mistrial, and we move on with the testimony. So Jimenez said he made multiple unsuccessful attempts to make contact with Capricorn Clark and Cassie Ventura during his investigation in the months that followed that fire. Jimenez also said he tried to reach Ventura through a family member of hers, but he could never really reach anyone. And his suspicion was they were avoiding him, which, y'all, the prosecution, what they were trying to prove was that they were scared of Diddy and they didn't want to get pulled into this shit. So the prosecution is done and the defense takes over with cross. The jury is then shown photos of a black glove in Kid Cudi's Porsche. And the defense wanted to know why the glove was not tested for DNA. And the arson investigator responded that he didn't send the glove for DNA testing or collect it as evidence because Kid Cudi said it was his driving glove. He went on to say a second glove was never found in the car. And I know y'all are like me at this point, and you're probably getting some really weird O.J. Simpson trial vibes when we're talking about black gloves and only finding one. I mean, that is exactly what that round of questioning reminded me of. Jimenez also testified that after calling Capricorn Clark several times, her brother answered the phone and told the investigator to leave her alone. Jimenez said he got into an argument with Clark's brother, who said, quote, she wanted nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the investigation. Jimenez also said he made contact with Cassie Ventura's father, who was also a fireman. And her father told Jimenez he'd let her know that Jimenez wanted to speak to her, but again, Cassie never got back with the investigator. And with that, Jimenez is off the stand. And the prosecution then called celebrity stylist Deontay Nash to the stand. And when asked by the prosecutor if he wanted to testify at this trial or was he subpoenaed and forced to, Nash responded, I was subpoenaed and absolutely not did I want to testify. And look, this is going to be a great witness, y'all. For you ladies out there, you know what I mean. Who knows more about you and what's going on in your life than your hairstylist. So this ought to be good. Deontay Nash said he was very close to Cassie Ventura when he worked for her as her stylist, roughly between 2009 and 2018. So they had almost a decade-long friendship. He said he saw her interact with Sean Combs at least once a week. Nash said Combs would call Ventura by various names, including baby girl, Cece, Cass, bitch, slut, ho, and he said them in that order. And look, this guy, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, is very full of personality, and he's almost funny. The guy's just hilarious on the stand. It's hard to describe. Nash said he remembered Combs called Cassie Ventura a bitch quite a bit, and he added that was his fave. Nash testified that Sean Combs would frequently threaten Cassie Ventura if she didn't do as he said. He said that Combs threatened to get her parents fired or send them her sex tapes or withhold her music from release. He went on to say Combs would sometimes be calm, sometimes irate, but always firm when issuing threats. Nash gave examples of how Combs controlled even the finest details of Ventura's career, including how she wore her hair to a Vanity Fair post-Oscar party. And he detailed that incident. He said, quote, she looked bomb. Her hair was down when they arrived. He said that Diddy saw her and grabbed him by the jacket, lifted him up, and told him Ventura's hair needed to be worn up. Nash then asked people for hairpins and told Ventura to go to the bathroom with other staff so he could fix her hair. Nash said Combs admitted to him later that night, though, that Ventura's hair looked much better down. And right here, the prosecution is getting Nash to speak on Combs' need to control Cassie, right? He testified that he had to send all photos of Cassie Ventura's outfits to Diddy for approval, saying, quote, he would pick which one he liked, and that was usually the one we went with. The prosecutor, Maureen Comey, then showed Nash a headshot of himself taken during the time he was working for Diddy. And Comey asked him if that was how he looked at the time, and he laughed, and he said no. He confirmed it was just a glamour shot and said, yep, I look amazing. And this prompted laughs throughout the courtroom. He then detailed threats Combs made, including not releasing Ventura's little mixtape if she kept having a smart-ass mouth. And of course, he's quoting Combs on that. He said he had once seen Combs punch and kick Cassie Ventura until her head started bleeding. And that numerous times he heard Combs tell Ventura that he would, quote, beat her ass, and that Ventura would be super emotional after these incidents. Nash also testified that Sean Combs told Cassie Ventura that her mixtape Rockabye Baby could go on streaming platforms if the free download release went on there as well. And he said that mixtape was the top mixtape of 2013, but the music was never sold online. And what the prosecution is getting him to speak to with that, y'all, is the fact that Diddy would punish Cassie, essentially, by not releasing her music. Remember, Cassie recorded 10 albums, and Sean Combs only released one of those. Now, why do you think that is? I mean, he would make money off that, right? Well, if she would have become a success that she was slated to be, she'd be pretty hard to control by him at that point, right? Once she started making her own money, she's a millionaire in her own right. So it's at this point that the jury gets dismissed for lunch. And after lunch, the prosecution continued. And Nash detailed a very disturbing altercation between Diddy and Cassie. He said sometime in 2013 or 2014, he was helping Cassie prepare for a trip. He hears a knock on the door, and he goes to the door because at this point in time, Cassie had fell asleep, and Combs rushes through the door. He said Combs came in yelling at Ventura about how she allegedly didn't answer her phone. And he said, I watched Combs grab her by the hair and pull her off the couch and just start hitting her. He said at that point, he ran into Ventura's bedroom with Ventura and one of Combs' assistants, and he identified that assistant as Mia, who incidentally is also scheduled to testify in this trial. He said Combs pushed open the door as they tried to lock him out of that bedroom. At that point, Combs continued to attack Ventura, hitting and kicking her until she hit her head on the bed frame. Nash and Mia both jumped on Combs' back, but he threw them off. Nash said Combs finally stopped when he noticed the blood, saying, quote, "When he noticed the blood, he just panicked." Nash said Combs then said to them, "Look at what y'all made me do." Nash said at that point he dialed 911, but someone told him to hang up before the call connected, and he couldn't remember who told him to hang up, whether it was Cassie or the assistant. Combs then told him and Mia that Ventura would go to a plastic surgeon with his security guard. Nash said the next time he saw Ventura, which was the next day on a video call, she had a gash on her forehead near her eyebrow and stitches. He then recounted a time in 2013 or 2014 when he was at Ventura's apartment and Diddy came over, saying he wanted to talk to Ventura. He said Combs and Ventura went into the bedroom, and when they came out, Combs grabbed her by the hair and the back of her shirt and started pushing her out while telling her to get out of his house. Nash said that Combs pushed Ventura halfway out of that door, and he began doing the same to Nash. Quote, "He was more so popping me in the back of the head because I don't have hair, and then he grabbed me by my shirt." Nash said he went downstairs to get in his car, and Ventura and Combs came down shortly after. Nash said, quote, "Puff began to berate us both, and he finally let us go." Nash said he and Ventura began driving away when they received a call from Combs telling them to pull over. Combs then came up to the window and started talking to Ventura, and he said that Combs told her he would put out sexually explicit videos of her on the internet. He quoted Combs as saying he was going to release them on schedule and start sending them to her parents' jobs. Wow. He said Combs also told Ventura that, quote, he was the only one that protected her, saying Ventura was in tears as they drove away. Nash then testified that he told Ventura that if Combs wanted to release the tapes, she should let him release the tapes, since he would be on those tapes too. It was his belief that Combs was just full of shit because he wouldn't want himself out there. However, he didn't know about all these free calls at the time. So Cassie said to him that she wasn't on the videos with Combs, that he was taping her with other guys. And he went on to say that Ventura said she didn't want to have sex with the other men, but she did it because Puff wanted her to. He then told the court of yet another incident where his boss, stylist Derek Roche, called him to say that he had given Nash's address to Combs and Combs was on his way there. Nash said he then dropped Cassie Ventura off on Sunset Boulevard so she could catch a cab. He said he got back to his house and Roche, Combs, and his security guard arrived there, and Combs started searching the house, asking where Cassie was. He testified that, quote, he even looked in the oven. I don't know why he looked in the oven. I mean, that is bizarre, right? Combs then took Nash's phone, which showed Ventura was calling him from a nearby hotel. Combs then demanded that Nash drive him to the hotel while he followed, so Nash could get Ventura to come out of the hotel room and speak to Combs. Combs knew that Nash knew the staff at that hotel, so he told Nash to sweet talk his way up to Cassie's room. Combs' security guard and chief of staff, someone by the name of Tony Fletcher, went with Nash up to her room, and he said Ventura was frightened when they got there. He said when they told her to go downstairs to Combs waiting outside, Ventura said she was going to, quote, go over to the balcony as she walked towards it. He then testified that when he left the hotel, he noticed a car was following him, and he thought it was Combs' security. He said he turned off his lights and sped away until he lost them, and then went to a different hotel to spend the night, testifying that, quote, I didn't think my home was safe to go to that night. He said the next day he returned to his home, and his backpack containing his ID $1,000 in cash, and his iPad had all been stolen. He then recalled an occasion around 2013 during a music video shoot for Ventura when Combs attacked him while he was outside smoking a cigarette. Combs grabbed Nash, threw him onto a parked car, and said, quote, "I thought I told y'all about going out wildin'." He also testified that he saw Combs slap Ventura across the face one time in 2015. Nash said there were a few other people in the parking lot outside of a music studio when he heard commotion. Nash said he looked over and he saw Combs slap Ventura across the face and say, quote, "Get this bitch out of here." Nash said he took Ventura away and she was in tears. The stylist also testified that he FaceTimed with Ventura while she was getting ready for The Perfect Match, which was that movie premiere in 2016. Nash said he noticed she had a black eye. And if you remember, tons of people have already testified to that. That was right after the hotel hallway incident where Combs was videoed beating the shit out of Cassie. Nash also testified he had observed bruises on Ventura's legs, arms, and neck quite often. And when he was asked about why he never reported any of this, he said the same thing that everyone else thus far has said, which was retaliation and fear. He went on to tell of a night they celebrated Ventura's 29th birthday. He testified that Combs and Ventura argued at dinner, and Combs told her he did everything for her, but she couldn't do this one thing. Nash said Ventura told him that Combs was mad because, quote, "I don't want to go to the hotel and freak off with him." And incidentally, as I'm recording this on May 28th, I just got an alert on my phone that Cassie just had her baby. Of course, last week they were trying to get through her testimony quickly because she could have that baby at any time. And today it was reported her and her husband, Alex Fine, have welcomed a baby boy. This is her third child. She also has 2 daughters with Alex Fine. So congratulations to Cassie. I think that's awesome. Let's continue on with Nash's testimony. He also testified that Ventura would go to a hotel with Sean Combs on a weekly basis and said he often saw her packing a black duffel bag with sex toys for those stays. So what do you think that is? That's freak off time, right? Nash said he stopped working for Sean Combs in 2018, but they've kept in touch and they occasionally talk over phone and text message. He said he'd act loving towards Combs when they spoke, despite everything he witnessed and personally endured. He noted that he has not pursued legal action or made a money demand against Combs. And Nash said he's still close to Cassie, and they speak pretty often. When asked how he feels about Combs now, Nash said, "I don't hate him." Further saying, I don't. It's just not in me. And with that, the prosecution was done, and defense attorney Xavier Donaldson gets his crack at the stylist. And he asked Nash if he was considering pursuing civil litigation against Combs. And Nash stated, "No, I'm focused on getting out of here." Donaldson asked if Nash retained counsel to consider suing Combs, and Nash responded by saying, "I have counsel to protect me. I don't do federal court." Donaldson asked Nash about his relationship with Miss Ventura, and Nash at this point corrects Donaldson, and he says, "Miss Fine." Of course, Cassie married Alex Fine in 2019. Xavier Donaldson then confirmed with Nash that he became a celebrity stylist after first being hired as an intern for Bad Boy Entertainment. And he was suggesting here that Diddy helped Nash get his start, to which Nash said, "Go ahead." Nash also confirmed he helped Cassie Ventura select her wedding dress. Nash also confirmed that a music label like Bad Boy Entertainment had an interest in making sure their artist appeared a certain way. Defense attorney Xavier Donaldson asked Nash if it were important for the person running the label to make sure an artist's clothing looked good. And Nash responded to that by saying, "Sometimes, yeah, And what the defense is trying to do here, essentially, is explain why Combs would control the way Cassie dressed. If you'll remember, Nash testified that Combs would flip out if she wasn't dressed a certain way. So the defense is trying to, and I would say this is somewhat accurate, they're trying to paint a picture that it's not a rare thing in the entertainment industry for these labels to control their artists in the way they dress, etc. And that doesn't necessarily mean someone's trying to control you in the way the prosecution is attempting to convey this. Now, I'm not taking up for Combs here, but what the defense is saying is true. This is not a rare thing in the entertainment industry. However, Nash did say Combs did not approve looks for other bad boy entertainment artists outside of Ventura. He said he didn't think any other artist had anyone approve their looks. When asked if other artists were treated like Cassie as it related to wardrobe, he stated, quote, "Not that I know of, because some of them look terrible." Most of the artists kind of did their own thing. That was his quote. Nash then testified when asked by the defense that he had seen Cassie Ventura take drugs, including Molly and ecstasy at times inside of her home. He testified that he personally smokes marijuana. As a matter of fact, he said one of his meetings with prosecutors was cut short after he told them he had smoked weed beforehand. So they can't take a deposition if you're high beforehand. And with that, court ended for the day. And the judge was none too happy about that. The defense was not done with their cross of Nash. And Nash, he's got a flight to catch tomorrow. And the judge pressed to the defense that fact that they needed to have their cross wrapped up today, but it didn't happen. And the judge actually commented that a lot of the questions that had been asked by the defense were not what you would call pressing questions. And he used an example. He said one of the things you asked Nash was, how would you define stylist? That takes time to answer, it takes time to ask, and it really has no relevance on the trial. It's just kind of a dumb question. He didn't say the dumb question part. I did. And I'll say this about Nash. He is definitely chock full of personality, y'all. He was very, I don't know if the term is funny on the stand, but he certainly lightened things up, especially during some darker than you'd like to hear testimony. As a matter of fact, at one point they took a break, and when they came back from the break, Nash had a jacket on, and the defense attorney, Xavier Donaldson, said, "Man, that's a nice jacket." And Nash, without breaking stride, looks at him and says, "It ain't your size." Xavier Donaldson's a little bigger than Nash, and I think that was a jab at his weight maybe, but it was just, I mean, he didn't hesitate to say that. There was not a 1 second delay. Very quick, this guy. He was certainly entertaining. And he'll be back tomorrow to complete his testimony. And of course, I'll be back to provide that update as well as other people that will be testifying tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. Shout out to my Patreon celebrity members. I could not do this without you. Check us out. Commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, even quarterly gifts for our top tier celebrity Patreon members. Patreon.com/exposed podcast files. And one more quick reminder, we're dropping one more episode on this feed of Crime Wire Weekly, and then it will be going to its new home. I will link the links. It's already set up. All you got to do is go to the link and follow that podcast if you're enjoying that content, and it will be in the description of this particular episode. So check that out, and until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.